So we are going to start learning about the seasons. Now, we're not going to necessarily focus on the basics like what season is it hot, what season is it cold. You're expected to already know that, right? Because summer it's hot, winter it's cold. And you're also supposed to know that winter goes into spring, spring goes into summer, and summer goes into fall, and fall goes into winter. So if you aren't familiar with that concept, you're going to need to review that on your own. I can set you up with some sources. You just have to let me know. Okay? So, in order to understand seasons, you also have to know the months. So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you write the 12 months in order. Okay? So do that now, starting at January. So you should also know the months by number, in the sense of, if I say month 8, you should know that's August. If I say month 11, you should know that it's November. If I say month 5, you should know that's May. So these are things that you should be familiar with. So let's try it out. So what is month 7? What is month 3? What is month 10? Okay, so now that we are familiar with the months, and if you're not, you need to continue to review this before you move on. We're going to learn a basic strategy for knowing how many days are in the months. All right? So what I start by doing, and you're going to need to do this, is I start by putting my hands out in front of me and pulling my thumbs in. Okay? Now, you're going to be counting the tops of your fingers to between your fingers, to the tops of your fingers, to between your fingers, to the tops of your fingers, to between your fingers. And we're going to go like this. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and now I switch to this hand, August, September, October, November, December. So what are we doing here? Every time I end on a long part, or the tip of my finger, that's a month with 31 days in it. Every time I end at the bottom here, between my fingers, this is a month with 30 days, besides February. So we're not going to worry about February right now. But let's say, how many days are in April? So I go January, February, March, April. I ended on it in between my fingers, so that April has 30 days, because I'm not on the tip, which would have 31 days. So let's try July. January, February, March, April, May, June, July. July ended on my fingertips, so that's a long month. That's got 31 days in it. Here's the tricky part. Let's try August, right? January, February, March, April, May, June, July, and the next one is August. I end here. So notice that July and August are right next to each other. That's why I do this, right? That's why I keep my thumbs in. That's why I keep my hands together. There's no between on my pinky. So July is the 31 days in a month, and August is 31 days in a month. Then September's 30, October's 31, right? Halloween's in October. November's 30, January's got 31. So that's how I know how many days are in my months. All right? So, things that you have to know going into seasons, before we even learn seasons. So, Earth is tilted on an axis, right? So it's tilted a little bit to the side, as you can see. The tip of this axis, as you can see, the tip of the axis points to the North Star. So, no matter where the Earth is in its orbit, the North Star, in this case, for this model, is somewhere that way, really far away that way. And the North Pole, right now, is always pointing at it. Now, just to be clear, the North Pole actually does wobble over thousands of years, so the North Star does change in the sense of the axis kind of starts pointing at different stars. But in our lifetime, it's not going to change. It's too slow of a change. So the North Pole always points towards the North Star, or towards Polaris. Another weird thing is that the Earth is closest to the sun in January. So think about that. The Earth is closest to the sun in January. Isn't January cold? Yes, it is. So the Earth is 91 million miles from the sun in January, and at its furthest point from the sun, it's 94 million miles from the sun. Now, that's a difference of 3 million miles. That's a lot, right? But when we're talking, the Earth is already so many millions of miles away from the sun that difference of 3 million doesn't really affect anything. So the closer we are to the sun does not affect the seasons, okay? So we're actually furthest from the sun in July, which is our hottest month, or one of our hottest months. Another thing that we need to know and keep in mind, the sun always rises somewhere in the east, okay? So the sun rises somewhere in the east. If you look at this person standing here, they're looking at the horizon. This would be winter. So the sun is going to be rising. You see the south here? South is this way. It's always rising somewhere in the east over here. It's just that in the winter, it's more on the south side of east. And in the summer, it's more on the north side of east. But it's always somewhere east, okay? Sun always rises somewhere east and always sets somewhere in the west. And then finally, so there's the difference between latitude and longitude. So latitude is based off of the equator. If you're north or south of the equator, longitude is measuring kind of like left to right on this map, or east to west, right? But for seasons, we care about latitude, meaning that in Florida here, it's usually warmer than it is in New York. And when New York is having its summer, that means down here in South America, near Chile and Argentina, they're having, so it's summer in New York, then it's winter in South America. It's winter in Australia. When it's winter in New York, it's the opposite. It's summer in South America and summer in Australia, okay? And finally, we're going to go over these terms, and you're going to be quizzed on these terms. So these are terms that you should be familiar with, at least the first three. Revolution is to go around the sun or to orbit the sun. That is a revolution. A rotation is to spin on an axis. Balls, like a basketball, rotates, right? When you shoot it in the hoop, so that is a rotation. So revolution is to go around an object. Rotation is for an object to spin. Insolation is sunlight. If I ask you to point to your zenith, you're going to go like this, which just means the zenith is the spot directly over your head. The horizon is the farthest you can see out, usually where the land meets the sky or where the edge of the ocean meets the sky. It's just the furthest that you can see out. Solar noon. Solar noon is often mistaken with zenith. Zenith is the point directly above your head, and solar noon is just on any particular day the sun's highest point in the sky. So sometimes, not in New York, never in New York, is the sun at your zenith. The sun is never directly over your head in New York. We're not close enough to the equator. But as you get closer to the equator or at the equator, on certain days, the sun at solar noon, or the sun's highest point during that day, can be the zenith or directly overhead. But that doesn't happen as often as you would think. Duration of insolation. So duration means time, all right? So the four major new words here are zenith, directly over your head, horizon, which is the furthest you can see out, solar noon, which is the sun's highest point on any given day. So in the winter for us, the sun is low in the sky. In the summer, the sun is high in the sky. But in New York, never at your zenith. And then duration of insolation, or the time, the amount of time of sunlight. You're probably noticing, now that we're getting away from winter and going towards summer, that the days are getting longer. Our duration of insolation, or the amount of time the sun is in the sky, is even longer. And every day it's going to get longer until that summer solstice, June 21st, sometimes June 22nd, sometimes June 20th. But usually June 21st is our summer solstice. And that is when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky for us. And that is the longest amount of, or the greatest duration of insolation, the longest amount of sunlight that we receive on any day, June 21st. Those are the basics of seasons. You may need to watch this video again. It's complicated stuff.